launch will start probably again this year. We are ready for it. But again, we will come with a pricing proposal to the payers that we think they will find reasonable. So we will agree and move ahead.
What about the European Union? Has there been any progress in negotiations on revising its COVID vaccine contract? Is there an agreement emerging, if at all?
There has been significant progress, and we are continuing the negotiations. And because this negotiation involves the EU plus all member states, there are so many, I don't want too many comments because it's open right now, but I'm optimistic that we should find a solution pretty soon.
You know, one of the things that I have wondered, so many of us have wondered, and maybe you can illuminate us, is why was China's government, the government of China, Beijing, so reluctant to use your COVID vaccine? Even at the height of their outbreak, just earlier this year, more recently, why was that?
First of all, I cannot comment for the Chinese government and how they are thinking. I'm sure they want the best for their people, and they have their way, and they have the responsibility to make the decisions. Clearly, they didn't use any Western type of vaccines, and they stick to it. And now I've read they are launching their own mRNA vaccines. I don't know, maybe they are very good, maybe they're not. I have no idea. On Paxlovid, they did use a lot of our medicine. The whole discussion that was with the Chinese government that leaked into the press was on the price negotiations to include it in the reimbursed, in the list of reimbursement. We couldn't come to an agreement. But in China, the product is available in the commercial channels. And it is available also in the state channels, but to be purchased commercially, not reimbursed. And we are working also for local manufacturing of the product in China. So I think the Paxlovid played a significant role in China and will continue, hopefully playing for the benefit of the patients.
But beyond this, I mean, do you think that this reluctance, sort of what happened with the COVID vaccines, is affecting your negotiations with China on other medications? Could there be a sort of lag effect or consequences for other medications?
I don't expect so, and I'm not afraid of something like that, no.
Okay. You know, another legacy of the pandemic, and we have seen this as we tried to report on it, has been growing mistrust of vaccines, and including in general, right, routine childhood immunizations. It has contributed, as you know, to the rise of figures like Robert F. Kennedy. What needs to be done to counter this wider assault on vaccines?
I think it's a very difficult situation, and I would say, unfortunately, it's not an assault on vaccines, it's on science. Everything that is scientific right now is disputed. And not only science as a whole, but very specifically, the credibility of iconic institutions like CDC or FDA or EMA in Europe is disputed as objective and scientific competent to have an opinion on those topics. Academia, like opinions that are issued by Harvard, by Stanford, by French universities, by UK universities, by Italian universities, okay, are disputed just in social media. We are living a situation that I never thought we will live, and clearly I never thought we will live after a pandemic where science is who saved us, right? It is science that won the virus, right? But right now, unfortunately, as it happens very often, any health issue is getting caught into politics. And unfortunately, at large in the world, the political life is heavily polarized right now. No matter where you look, in a European country or in the American or in every part almost of the world, we don't have a normality in terms of political debate. We have a situation that the two parties, they don't talk, and they are the voices are getting louder, which means they don't listen to each other because they are listening only to their voice. And that's unfortunate. And I don't know how to resolve it, really. So I hope that things will become better because people will start listening to one another. And then again, the trust to people that they know, they're scientists, they spend all their life in doing that, will return.
But so specifically, is there anything that, that Pfizer is doing specifically or can do or is thinking of doing to counter this misinformation? You're such a big player.
We are a very big player, and we attract a lot of publicity in everything we do or say. And we have a responsibility as a result. So what we do, we try to be always as transparent and truthful so that we maintain this trust. When I look at surveys, that it's very important for us. Pfizer is standing out from the rest of our pharmaceutical company, the other pharmaceutical companies, in two aspects. One, it's extremely high recognizability of our name. 80% globally, in the US, 90+%. If you ask anyone on the street, do you know what is Pfizer? They know that it is a company that is making vaccines and treatments. And the second thing it is that the amount of people that they have very positive opinion and trust us is very, very high, higher than not ever, very, very high, on the 60s, which means that we are having a very strong base that people are trusting us. But clearly, there is a smaller group, but very vocal, very passionate, that they have doubts about it. And this is a group of people that they are very good people. There are people that were afraid in general of vaccines, maybe, and maybe the mandates that every single country almost in the world implemented, that you need to be vaccinated, otherwise you can't go to a restaurant or you can't travel. They forced them to do something that they didn't want. So those people, clearly they are frustrated because of their fear and what happened. And they are the victims of a small minority of people that they are making disinformation. Those are people that they know what they are saying is wrong. And they know that they will have an impact on human lives. But despite that, they are saying because it's serving political or financial agenda. And their target is this group of people that maybe they are 15, 20% in a country that they are skeptical about what is happening. Minority, but significant. So I think we need to talk to these people, ourselves as well. They are good people. They have their doubts. You cannot dismiss that they're afraid of the vaccine. You should talk to them and explain them as with rational, with data, with conviction, how the situation is. And slowly, slowly, we will be the ones that convince them to listen to, rather than this very small minority of people that they are spreading disinformation on them.
There is a ton of audience questions coming in. So I'm going to tackle a couple of them. One of them that came in super, super early, so something people are very interested in, is given the success of mRNA therapies during COVID-19, in what other therapeutic areas do you see mRNA having an impact? I believe you've seen mixed results in testing the mRNA vaccines against flu. Does that influence your view on how it might be best used in the future?
I think the mRNA technology will be used in several applications. And the lowest hanging fruit is to make other vaccines. I'm very optimistic that we will have good vaccines for flu with the mRNA technology. And optimistic because I know data. We haven't completed our program yet, so that we can disclose it, but it's running, and is running in many, many countries in the South and North Hemisphere. So I think I'm optimistic that we will have something. and it is not the only.
I'm very curious because, you know, can you give us a sense of sort of, you sound very optimistic. Can you give us, you know, a percentage, a number, something that you can share your optimism with us regarding these results with flu?
I said optimistic, not very, very optimistic. And in science, I say that because in science, I have seen many times clinical trials that the first initial data are showing something very promising, and then the final data, they're coming and they are not fulfilling this promise of the early. So we need to wait to see the data. But of course, from data that I see on the lab and for data that I see in early phases about the immune responses that we are creating in terms of antibodies, the T cell responses that I see in terms of cellular immunity are making me think that we can have something important here. But we need to wait to see the final clinical results, and I'm optimistic that they will be positive in showing better vaccines that we can have with mRNA.
And just last question, when do you think you will be able to speak with more certainty? I think, you know, the world was, in a way, you know, we were treated by, never had vaccines for COVID, never had the vaccine process been as fast as COVID, right? So I think the world now thinks that you can operate at this speed all the time. You know, when do you think you will have a sense of whether your optimism is going to be proven true or not? How much
our flu program, for example, is expected to read out before the end of the year. Usually in these clinical trials, the key dependency, it is the infection rates, how many cases you will accumulate, because the way that the studies are working is you vaccinate people, and then you are waiting to see how many of them will get flu. And when you have enough number of flu cases that you don't know if they belong to the placebo or to the control, if they belong to your new treatment or to the old treatment, because you're comparing to an old treatment, then when you open it, you will see how many cases you have in one and how many in the other, to see if they are different, better or worse. So it depends how many cases we will be able to accumulate. When we make calculations before the end of the year, we should know.
Got it.
But you never know.
Of course. So just to close on the COVID part, and then we can move on to something else. There is increased talk in the United States of creating a commission to review the handling of the COVID pandemic, you know, similar to the inquiry into the events into September 11, 2001. Would you support such an effort?
Look, I think transparency is important, but as long as it stays as a bipartisan, and let's find solutions to be able to do the truth. I'm not certain in this environment of polarization that we can accomplish that, but you know, I hope for the best. As I said, I'm always a half full glass type of person.
So another question, a very popular audience question, which I think you know, just shows the level of interest in this industry, you know, after, especially in time after COVID. So typically, the question asks, typically your industry is focused on cure. How much of your time is spent on preventative medicines and steps?
More and more, I think, at least at Pfizer's case. One, it is because we have a significant research efforts in many vaccines. I spoke to you about 19 new products. 5 of them are expected to be vaccines. So it's a significant effort, and that's clearly on prevention. Also, a lot of our medicines that we are having are eventually preventing serious situations that can happen. And that's also another, let's say, aspect. So it is recognized that prevention, it is way more cost effective for the healthcare system. It is also recognized that prevention is reducing human pain and suffering way more effectively than waiting until the individual is sick and then try to treat them. So we are diverting a lot of attention to something like that.
Great. So we've talked a little bit about politics and the polarization, that you have in politics and society, and science has become almost a political issue, right? Which seems, strange to say the least. But I am going to ask you a more political administration question, which is, the Biden administration, is moving forward with its first effort to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. How manageable is this change for the industry, or are we witnessing the end of an era for pharmaceutical developers when it comes to basically seeing the bulk, the majority of their profits from the United States?
I think that there is a new legislation, which is the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. And let me start again. I'm a very positive man. There are some positive provisions in this IRA, and some positive provisions for the patients that will reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure for the senior Americans that are under Medicare to a certain amount per month. I don't think it goes as deep as it should, but clearly it is a positive direction. Then there is on the other hand, this provision that is called negotiation. It's not negotiation at all. It is price setting. The negotiation, it is that the other party will tell you what is the price, and if you reject their offer, they will tax you 95%. So this is negotiation with a gun in your head. I think that will have a significant impact. There are a lot of mistakes that were done in this law. For example, they are saying that the negotiation will happen 9 years after the regulatory approval for small molecules and 13 for large molecules. I can't understand. How is it possible to have a law that will tell someone, don't invest in low molecules, invest only in large molecules? Because why to invest in small when you're getting 4 years less of pricing than with large molecules? If the playing field was level, you will go where science is taking you. If you see the opportunity with a small molecule to go after cancer, you will use a small molecule. And if you see that you have better chances with a large, you will go large. Now you will ignore one of the two because the government is telling you which scientific way to force, because the incentives are very important. So I think every single company that is doing research, and I'm not talking about the 15 to 20 biopharmaceutical companies like us, but I'm talking about the 1,000 of biotech small companies, will have very big issues in finding financing for small molecules, and they will also have very big issues in general, and they will be very careful where and how much they invest in research. It's unfortunate because you are coming out of a global health crisis that became financial crisis as a result of the COVID. But the only reason why we are here today was because we had a thriving life sciences industry. We have a life science industry that they did the tests, the vaccines, the treatments, you name it. So it's unfortunate that just after that, we create such an environment which creates a lot of disincentives.
So do you expect the pharmaceutical industry, the bigs and the thousands of littles, to sue to stop the legislation from taking effect before 2026?
I think that there will be legal actions, but I'm not sure if that will be able to stop anything before 26 or not. I think the most certain way of doing something like that likely will be to agree on Congress to make some changes. I'm not optimistic, though, that also this will happen, because it's a divided government in the US, and I don't think any legislation will move before year 2026. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope there will be some bipartisan legislations that will happen, and hopefully also for health, but I'm not very optimistic.
What about in the European Union? European Union is also moving ahead with major new legislation that will affect drug pricing power. How does the industry deal? Explain to us how you deal with such shifts in its two biggest markets.
They're concerning, and all over the world, there are some pressures on pricing that we try to explain. As I said, the realities of the financials are very tough and are making governments making short-term rather than medium and long-term decisions. And the short-term, it is to reduce the number of prices, but this will have mid and long-term consequences, because this is how the research is working. You need to be able to have revenues so that you can invest at risk, because don't forget, you need money from people that they are willing to risk 100 times before one project becomes successful, because those are the success rates. So it's not positive. I have to say, though, that I see more and more in Europe a sensitivity that Europe needs to step up in the research field. More and more governments are discussing about building biotech ecosystem in their countries, and Europe as a whole, to attract life sciences investments. So the framework that I see is trying to accomplish a lot of that, and there are a lot of things in a positive direction, but also they try to balance it with other things that could destroy what they're trying to achieve. So I think I hope wisdom will prevail eventually when all these discussions become a law.
Now, as you can imagine, there's a whole slew of questions on AI, because of course everybody's talking about AI. So I'm going to ask you from the audience, there are two questions. I'll ask them together so you can answer them, as it most relates to your business. How do pharmaceutical companies embrace digitalization and AI as a new business territory? Could apps or software work as medicines? Not quite 100% sure, but that's the question. And then which areas of artificial intelligence are most helping your business? And which problem would you most appreciate help from an AI on?
I believe that digitization, and particularly the new revolution that is coming with artificial intelligence, is one of the most important levers that will allow us to discover new medicine vaccines. I think we are entering actually really a decade of a scientific renaissance, which is what happened in Europe actually years back. And this is happening not only because we have advancements in biology and medical science, but also advancements in technology, and the two are creating enormous possibilities. We are using AI right now in multiple different areas of our business, let's say, if I can call it that model, particularly in research. One very, very good example, it is that in research, I see the trends moving from drug discovery, which means that you try 3 million different molecules, and you try to discover which one of them could have some benefits for the patients, into instead of drug discovery, drug design. So you are using artificial intelligence predominantly and very big computational power to create models that will design a molecule based on theoretically what molecule could work. And then you can choose among the few. It's not scientific fiction, what I'm telling you.
But so it's a question of efficiency then. So basically the model will help you decide which direction to go in.
Absolutely. I will give you a very tangible example. Usually the phase of discovering and selecting a molecule is taking 4 years of the 10 that a drug, a small molecule, will take. That phase for Paxlovid took 4 months. And during those 4 months, we were able to design 600 different molecules with AI and artificial intelligence. We didn't have to go to 3 million. And from these 600, then we were able to select the one that we tried into the labs, and then we tried into the clinical trials. That's a very, very good example of something that was used to generate something remarkable for society. We can do the same in every single step of the research process, not only on the drug discovery and how you design molecules. We can use artificial intelligence to identify which patients can be part of our clinical trials. We can go into data and big data that exist in healthcare systems, and through AI, discover trends that were unknown to us. So, for example, to connect a gene with a disease that we didn't know that there is a connection, and find the solution. On cancer, by doing the genotype of the cancer molecules, AI would select which is the area that we should attack the cancer cell so that we can kill it and have, let's say, a result without affecting the other parts of the body, the health. So I can go on, and then in the manufacturing process with AI to predict what mistakes can happen and to be able to control your process so you don't have failures and then drug shortages. So sometimes there are no drugs. That happens mainly because somewhere in the manufacturing process, something went wrong, and then the whole batch had to be thrown away. So I'm very, very bullish in the impact that AI could play in life sciences.
This is fascinating. I feel that we could have a whole session just on this, because the ramifications and the applications seem to be immense. But you mentioned clinical trials, and there's a very interesting question from the audience on clinical trials. The question says, as we have seen clinical trial diversity numbers dropped to its lowest level of the decade, how is Pfizer tackling the issue of clinical trial diversity?
First of all, it is very high in our mind, and we try to make sure that the makeup of the population that is participating in clinical trials represents the makeup of the population that the medicine will be applied. And in the US particularly, it's clear that some populations like the African Americans or the Latino are underrepresented in the population of the clinical trials. In fact, Pfizer, we are not at our worst. Actually, we are at best ever for Pfizer particularly. We did, because it's very important to us, a recent survey of the participation, and we were almost on census for the African Americans, and we are making significant progress for Latinos. So we are trying to make sure that patients or health volunteers from the African American community, Latinos, are equally represented as from the whites and the Asians, that they're overrepresented in these trials.
So I think we have time for one more question, and I would like to ask you about abortion, the abortion pill. Pfizer expressed disagreement with the court ruling in Texas to block the use of the abortion pill, and it's possible that the same judge would overturn the FDA's approval of the drug. How concerned are you that the court could revoke an FDA approval? And could this in general undermine other medicines in the public eye?
Clearly, we made a clear statement because we are very concerned. This is not about abortion pills or not. It has nothing to do with that. What has to do, it is with the ability of a judge to say if a medicine is safe and effective or not. I think the safety and effectiveness of the medicines need to be assessed by institutions that are made in every country just to do that. In the US, this responsibility has been delegated by Congress to the FDA, not to judges. And they are the only ones that should be responsible for doing that. And frankly, they are the most iconic regulatory body in the world. Every regulator in the world are looking at them and they are learning from them. The same very, very high level is EMA, for example, in Europe, or the Japanese medical agency. So it's unthinkable in Europe to think that the scientists and the EMA will say that a medicine is not effective, for example, and not get approval, and then a judge can come and say, no, we think it is. We will put it in the market, and vice versa, because it's the same. I think that undermines the whole system of trust that we need to have, that there are governmental agencies that will guarantee that they did all the due diligence when they approve or disapprove a medicine, and not the judicial system.
Thank you. Dr. Bourla, we are at the end. These 45 minutes flew by. Thank you so much for all your time. It has been a fascinating discussion. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very, very much, Alessandra. Thank you very much.